Hey there, geography fans, ready for an adventure? Nestled in Central America, Guatemala's got it all, from lush jungles to bustling cities. We're talking volcanoes, beaches, and enough history to make your head spin faster than a Mayan calendar after a few margaritas. Imagine standing at the foot of a towering volcano, feeling the Earth's power beneath your feet. We're talking ancient civilizations, Spanish conquistadors with questionable hygiene, and a modern-day vibe that's equal parts vibrant. And wait, did that really just happen? Picture yourself wandering through the cobblestone streets of Antigua, surrounded by colorful colonial buildings. Buckle up, amigos, because we're about to dive headfirst into the wild, wonderful, and slightly bewildering world of Guatemala. Whether you're an adrenaline junkie or a history buff, there's something here for everyone. Now, I know what you're thinking. John, why Guatemala? What makes it so special? Isn't that where all the tourists get Montezuma's revenge? First of all, rude. And second, there's so much more to this country than just that. Guatemala's got way more to offer than digestive distress. Think stunning Mayan ruins that transport you back in time, delicious coffee that'll kickstart your heart faster than a political scandal, and trust me, the coffee here is something you don't want to miss. And a cultural tapestry so rich, it makes a tapestry factory look like a minimalist's apartment. The vibrant markets are a feast for the senses, with colors and textures that will leave you in awe. But before we get to all that, let's rewind the clock a few thousand years, shall we? Let's dive into the ancient history that shaped this incredible land. Remember those massive stone pyramids you thought were just for Egypt? Well, think again. Yeah, turns out the Maya were building them in the jungles of Guatemala centuries earlier. These weren't just any pyramids, they were architectural marvels that stood the test of time. These guys were the overachievers of the ancient world. Architects, mathematicians, astronomers, you name it, they probably had an app for it, carved in stone, of course. Their carvings and artifacts tell stories of a civilization that was incredibly advanced for its time. We're talking sprawling cities like Tikal, with temples that reach for the sky like they're trying to high-five the gods. These cities were bustling hubs of activity, filled with people, markets, and ceremonies. The Maya were so good at math, they invented the concept of zero before it was cool, which, let's be honest, is a pretty big deal. Their numerical system was so advanced that it allowed them to create complex calendars and astronomical charts. They also had a writing system so complex it makes hieroglyphics look like emojis. Their glyphs were used to record everything from historical events to daily activities, giving us a glimpse into their sophisticated society. But like any good party, the Mayan civilization eventually had to end. The reasons for their decline are still debated, but it's clear that their cities were eventually abandoned. By the time the Spanish showed up in the 16th century, things had chilled out considerably. The once great cities were now overgrown with jungle, and the Maya had dispersed into smaller communities. Still, they left behind a legacy that's as impressive as it is mysterious, kind of like that friend who always aced their exams without ever seeming to study. Their achievements in architecture, mathematics, and astronomy continue to fascinate and inspire us today. Speaking of the Spanish, let's just say their arrival in Guatemala wasn't exactly what you'd call respectful tourism. They didn't come with guidebooks and cameras, they came with swords and a sense of entitlement. Led by the ever-so-charming Pedro de Alvarado, spoiler alert, he wasn't very charming, the conquistadors did what conquistadors do best: conquer, convert, and generally make a mess of things. They marched through the dense jungles, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. Turns out horses, guns, and smallpox are a pretty effective combo for subjugating an entire civilization. Who knew, right? The indigenous people had never seen anything like it, and they were utterly unprepared for the onslaught. The Spanish quickly established their dominance, transforming Guatemala into a colony and forcing the indigenous population into a life of, well, let's just say it wasn't pretty. They built grand colonial buildings, but the cost was paid in human suffering. For the next 300 years, Guatemala was basically Spain's sugar daddy, or should we say sugar plantation daddy. The land was exploited for its resources, and the wealth flowed back to Spain. The indigenous population was put to work on farms and mines, while the Spanish elite sipped sangria and pretended not to notice the whole exploitation thing happening right under their noses. It was a brutal and unforgiving era marked by inequality and suffering. Section 4, Independence, Libertad. Terms and conditions apply. Fast forward to the 19th century, and guess what? People were getting a little tired of the whole being ruled by a country thousands of miles away thing. In 1821, Guatemala, along with its Central American neighbors, declared independence from Spain. And you know what that means? Time for a fiesta. Except, not so fast. Turns out declaring independence is the easy part. Building a stable and just society after centuries of colonialism? Yeah, that's a whole other enchilada. Guatemala's first few decades of independence were about as smooth as a salsa made with chunky salsa. Coups, counter-coups, and power struggles became the national pastime, making it clear that the fight for true freedom was far from over. Section 5, 20th Century Roller Coaster Coups, Conflicts, and Cold War Chaos. Hold on to your hats, folks, because the 20th century in Guatemala was a wild ride. We're talking a roller coaster of political turmoil, social unrest, and enough Cold War intrigue to make James Bond reach for a stiff drink. Shaken, not stirred, obviously. From dictatorships to revolutions, Guatemala saw it all. Sadly, this period also saw one of the darkest chapters in the country's history, a brutal civil war that lasted for over 3 decades. Indigenous communities caught in the crossfire between the government and leftist guerrilla groups faced unimaginable violence and oppression. The international community, meanwhile, seemed more interested in playing Cold War chess than actually helping Guatemala. It was a classic case of geopolitical interests trumping basic human rights, which, let's be honest, isn't exactly a glowing endorsement of humanity. Section 6, Modern Guatemala, from Backpacker's Paradise. And they're not afraid to fight for a better future. From grassroots activists demanding social justice to entrepreneurs driving economic growth, there's a palpable sense of hope and determination in the air. Section 7, looking ahead, hope, challenges, and maybe some more jokes. So, what does the future hold for Guatemala? If history is any indication, it'll be a wild ride, but one thing's for sure, this little country with a big heart is definitely one to watch. Will they finally figure out a way to bottle that Volcan de Fuego lava and sell it as the ultimate energy drink? Will they perfect the art of the pupusa to the point where it becomes the official food of the United Nations? Only time will tell. One thing's for certain though, no matter what challenges lie ahead, you can bet the Guatemalan people will face them with their signature mix of resilience, humor, and a whole lot of heart. And hey, if all else fails, there's always more coffee.